So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the election on November 3rd, 2020. First off, we would say that he was in his Saturn Antardasha, Saturn subperiod, from January 2019 until July 2021. Is Saturn favorable for his chart? Absolutely favorable. It rules relationships, partnerships, joint ventures, and marriage. But where is it in the natal chart? In the house of losses. And it's utterly weak at 0 degrees. 0 to 5 is infant state and weak. These two planets are weak. By the way, this is the birth chart, and this inner circle is exactly the same chart. It's just the circular format of this chart. This allows us to overlay the transits in the outer circle. 3 ways to look at the transits. Transit planets impact natal planets. Natal planets impact transit planets, and transit planets impact each other. So on November 3rd, it's about 10 o'clock at night when most of the results are counted by then. Transit Ketu, 26 degrees, was on top of natal Ketu at 27 and natal moon at 28. And vice versa. Transit Rahu at 26 degrees was on top of natal Rahu and natal Sun. It's an eclipse of Sun and Moon. Moon was there. So an eclipse of the election. Venus rules his self-initiatives. It was in her house of debilitation. Sun ruling the chart. In Libra, the debilitation sign for Sun. Saturn, the operating planet, was in a Dustan Bhava. The 6th house, the 8th house, and 12th house are Dustan Bhavas, inauspicious houses. Planets going to the 6th, 8th, and 12th become weak for that duration, whether it's a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or a couple of years. Well, Saturn was, even though Saturn rules Capricorn, is still not a favorable house. So conflicts, disputes. Look at the disputes over the election. Saturn actually stayed in the house of disputes. Let's first see when it entered. All right, went in and out there a couple times. So went into the house of disputes, conflicts, enemies. So around January 2020. I think he went retrograde and got out of there. But he stayed there. He never got out of there. He stayed in that house even in October and in November for the election. He stayed in that house and he went retrograde and still stayed there again. So he's never really gotten out of the house of conflicts and disputes. He's continued all these disputes. This is through the middle of April 2022. The whole duration has been in the house of disputes, and it rules relationships, partnerships, joint ventures, marriage. Now, Saturn recently moved into a much more favorable house, which is Aquarius. But Saturn never gains strength in this house. 0 degrees in May Only gets up to 1 degree before going retrograde to exit back out of this house. So Saturn will remain in this 6th house of conflicts and disputes until next January. So from now to next January, there's no protection with relationships. Now let's see where he is. He's now in the Mercury subperiod, which is more favorable for him. Absolutely much more favorable for him. It's in its own sign of Gemini. It is free from any afflictions. And its house is free from any afflictions. It's Multricone sign. In the Navam's chart, Saturn is in the house of good fortune. I'm sorry, Mercury's in the house of Saturn's house, but it's Mercury's in the house of good fortune, ruled by Saturn in the house of wealth and status. That's favorable. Look at this in Navam's chart. Same thing here. Sun and Moon are afflicted by Rahu and Ketu. No escape. The Sam's chart is the house of the chart of professional life. Sun in the 1st house makes him king, makes him president, makes him leader. But it is in its debilitation sign, and it's afflicted by Rahu and Ketu. Debilitated Jupiter here. Badly placed Saturn and Venus. Badly placed Mars. Mercury holds up. Good subperiod for him. So we might think he's making some progress, but I think there's other things going on that's not going to be of help. Mostly that this Saturn is headed back in here until after about the 3rd week of January next year. So until then, he doesn't have a lot of support. And transit Jupiter is in Pisces. The 8th house is a Dustan Baba. 6th, 8th, and 12th houses are Dustan Babas in every chart. Inauspicious houses. Planets going into the 6th, 8th, and 12th become weak. So he's going to have Saturn over here in a Dustan Baba, and he's going to have Jupiter over here in a Dustan. And these are the slow-moving planets. So Jupiter's not going to help him before next May. Middle of next April will come into Aries, which is better. But it will take a couple of weeks to get some strength. But until next May, he has no support. So right now, during all these hearings, all these investigations, he has no support from Jupiter and Saturn. And those are really extremely important for every chart, especially when they're favorable planets for somebody and they're in unfavorable houses. No power, no protection. He has a little bit of support from Rahu and Ketu at 28 degrees in odd signs. There's nothing around 28 degrees in odd signs in his chart. Next time they go stationary will be 19 degrees. He has nothing at 19 degrees. And then after that, the next time they go stationary will be 9 degrees. He has nothing at 9 degrees. So this is good news for him. Rahu and Ketu are not going to be causing any serious damage in his personal chart, in his natal chart. They might cause trouble over here, but not over here. But in terms of the coming election, he goes into a Ketu subperiod October 2023. It lasts 11 months. Is Ketu favorable? No. Causes an eclipse of the moon, and the 7th aspect causes an eclipse of the sun. It's a very challenging setbacks, delays, obstructions, disappointments. So I'm thinking that even if he has some problems legally, he may try to postpone them, but then this is not going to protect him. So he may take things to court, may appeal things this year while he's losing everything in courts. But the appeals will run out or be overturned or whatever, because he's going to go into K2. K2 takes everything away if a person's not on a spiritual path. K2 demands spiritual progress, spiritual practices. Otherwise, it makes a person homeless. He can put a person in a prison. He can put a person in a hospital. You can have somebody attacked or give them addictions. So don't worry about K2 if you are on a spiritual path. So every morning, do your spiritual practices first and then get about your business. Fine. And live your life awake, in presence, in spirituality. Very important to have simplicity, patience, and compassion. Then when we get to November 2024, Shukra, Venus, would be the operating planet. Where's Venus? 12th house, losses, expenses, separations, depression, isolation, imprisonment, hospitalization, ruled by Moon, debilitated, and afflicted by Rahu and Ketu. Now, Moon is the emotional state, and Rahu and Sun aspects Moon. So emotionally, he's the king. My way or the highway. He takes his own decisions regardless of what other people say. All these people, all these judges, all these attorneys, all these people came to him and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, but the election results are valid. You lost the election. It's time for a peaceful transfer of power." But this huge ego comes in. I don't care what everybody says. I should be president, so I'm going to get it however I can get it. Following the Venus subperiod is Sun, which is afflicted by Rahu and Ketu, and then Moon, the most malefic planet. So I personally think he's got rough sailing until July 2029. And even that Mars doesn't give a lot of relief, because Mars is ruled by Sun, and it's afflicted by Rahu, Ketu, and Moon. So there's no protection there. Then he goes into Rahu subperiod. Usually Rahu will cause massive change, mostly letting go. Rahu's Maya, illusion. Then he goes into 19 years of Saturn. Where's Saturn? In the house of prisons. Hospitalization, end of life. So I'm not optimistic for him. But my main point is that Saturn is going to be in this house until late next January. Jupiter is going to be in this house until middle of next April. So I think those 2 dates are important. Until then, he does not have support from Jupiter and Saturn. And Jupiter is law and luck. Rules investments and children. It's a house of obstructions, delays, and disappointments. He was disappointed in his own daughter recently, who said, "Oh no, she heard from the Attorney General and she believed the Attorney General when he said there was no election fraud." And then he attacked her in the social media, saying that she had checked out. I don't think that's going to sit too well with her or her husband. So he may have some disappointments with his children, including his son-in-law. Very interesting that he won the election in 2016 during the last portion, the last week or so of Rahu, and in the final subperiod of Mars. This is always massive change. Some people go up, some people go down. I've seen people change houses, spouses, careers, and that's what happened. He won the election. He had to change his career. No longer a businessman, but now the president. No longer lives in Trump Tower, lives in the White House. Everything changed. He went into the lucky Jupiter main period right after the election. And Jupiter is ruled by a powerful Mercury, giving tremendous ability for communications. We will see. Okay, these are the main points from my perspective. Namah Shivaya.